400 kilometers from the sea, in the forest bogs of Småland, there is a photograph that archaeologists pass around the way other people pass around ghost stories. Taken from a crane, straight down, it shows 31 white vessels set into black peat, arranged, with surveyor's precision, in a spiral. Every one of them was carved from salt crystal. Every one of them came from a kingdom that had already drowned. In our last investigation, we followed the salt kingdom of Jutland's lost coast to its end, a storm surge, around 800 BC, that took the settlement in a single winter. But two details refused to fit. The youngest artifacts showed no storm damage, as if the town had been emptied before the water came. And someone somewhere had carried the kingdom's religion 400 kilometers inland. This is the story of where they went. The site announced itself, as bog sites usually do, by accident. In the autumn of 2004, a peat-cutting machine near the village of Hult brought up something in its blade that its operator first took for a lump of ice. It did not melt in his hand. He drove it to the parish museum in a lunchbox, and by the following spring, the machine tracks had been fenced off and the diggers had arrived. Peat bogs are archives that never learn to forget. Cold, airless, and acid, they hold what falls into them in a kind of suspended sentence. Wood keeps its grain, cloth keeps its weave, and salt crystal, which the sea would have dissolved and the soil would have crushed, lies in bog water as if in a jeweler's case. Whoever chose this place to leave the kingdom's vessels chose the one ground in Scandinavia that would keep them forever. The excavation took 3 summers. The spiral, it turned out, was only its surface. Beneath each vessel, driven vertically into the peat, stood an oak stake, 31 of them cut, the tree rings say, from the same forest in the same year. And at the spiral's heart, beneath the largest vessel, lay something else. A disc of oak, a hand's width across, polished smooth, face down. The vessels themselves settled one question immediately. Under magnification, they show the 7 tool profiles, the signature of the Salt Kingdom's single workshop tradition, unchanged through 4 centuries on the coast. These were not imitations made by inland admirers. Whoever carved the Småland vessels had learned in that drowned town, at those benches, from those masters. The workshop had survived its own kingdom. Then the laboratories reported, and the story turned over. The oak stakes were felled 38 years after the storm layer on the Jutland seabed. 38 years. The spiral was not the work of refugees stumbling inland with what they could carry. It was made by people who had lived a full generation after the flood, who had raised children and taught apprentices, and kept the 7 tools sharp, and who then walked into a bog and gave the sea's religion back to fresh water. 400 kilometers on foot, through Bronze Age Scandinavia, bog, forest, and river country, carrying 31 vessels of a material that dissolves in rain. It cannot have been one journey. The route, if we could see it, was more likely a chain. A generation of carriers, wintering in friendly settlements, wrapping the vessels in tallow-soaked hide, moving the kingdom's heart inland one valley at a time. Archaeologists have started calling it, half seriously, the Salt Road. Somewhere along it, there may be more stations like Hult. No one has found them. No one until recently was looking. They did not come to an empty wilderness. 2 kilometers from the spiral, on a sand ridge above the bog, survey teams found the post holes of a village, 11 houses, raised in a style found nowhere else in Småland, but everywhere in the drowned grid off Jutland. Stilt construction, on dry land. 400 kilometers from any tide. They built the way their grandparents had built, over water that wasn't there. And the bog kept one more thing. In the final summer, a meter beyond the spiral's outer arm, the peat gave up a body. A woman, 60 years old or more, laid out with care, not a sacrifice, the examiners concluded, but a burial. The acid water had kept her face. Visitors to the Kalmar Museum, where she now lies, often say the same thing about it, unprompted, that she looks like someone who finished something. Across her chest lay a roll of oiled hide, and inside it bronze, 7 tools, the 7 profiles. She was not carried to the bog by her people. She was the last of the carvers, perhaps the one who set the final vessel in the spiral's heart, and when she died, the workshop of the Salt Kingdom, 4 centuries old and 38 years homeless, closed forever. There is no 8th generation. Every vessel we will ever find has already been made. Which returns us to the question the photograph asks. On the coast, the ritual was clear. Vessels of salt, filled with fresh water given to the sea, the land's sweetness offered down into the brine. At Hult, everything is inverted. Salt vessels in fresh water spiraling inward instead of sinking down. Some read it as a funeral for the religion itself, the offering that could no longer be delivered, coiled up and put away. Others read it as an address change, a message to the Salt Mother that her people had moved and where she could find them. And beneath the leading interpretations runs a quieter question, the one that follows this story home. The dating proved the carriers lived for decades after the flood. It cannot tell us when they left the coast. 31 vessels wrapped and provisioned for a journey of years. 11 houses, built in the old style, waiting on a surveyed ridge. Nothing about Hult looks like an escape. Everything about it looks like a plan. And plans, as the excavation director wrote in her final report, are made by people who know something is coming. Which leaves the oak disc, the polished circle found face down beneath the spiral's heart. When the conservators turned it over, they found carving. 3 marks in the order we know from 12 vessels and counting, and beneath them, cut deeper as if it mattered more, a 4th. It appears on no vessel. It appears nowhere on the coast. Whatever the Salt Kingdom's 3 marks say, the people of the bog added a word and buried it face down, where only the ground could read it. What the 4 marks together might mean, and the team that believes it has begun to read them. That is a story for another time. If this pulled you in, subscribe. New mysteries drop regularly across every series in the Archive project. The next episode's waiting.